Hello, this is Peg Rowe, and I'm one of the leaders for Tiara International. And today I'm going to share with you one of the tools that we use that supports the dimension of our model called community. So to get us started, before we even look at the Tiara tool, just take a moment and stop and consider all the communities that you belong to. So I'll give you a moment to just stop and consider the communities that you belong to and think about which ones are the ones that make you happy, proud, that you enjoy being part of. And as you consider that, think about what is it about that community that makes you happy, proud, and satisfied to be part of. Okay, great. So now we're kind of in the mindset of thinking about our communities. Let me tell you a little bit about how this session is going to go today. So I'll be sharing the Tiara tool around leveraging your communities, and we'll kind of walk through that. And if you have it printed off, that's great. If you have it on your computer screen, that's great too. Otherwise, just take out a piece of paper. I'll put it on my screen so you can follow through and just answer the questions. I'll go through the actual tool itself, but you'll want to pause to stop and answer the questions as we move through it. So I won't pause long enough for you to answer the question each time, but just hit the pause button on your video and take time to thoughtfully answer those questions and then continue to move on. So I'm going to go ahead and share screen and pull the tool up so you can see it and we can see it together. All right. Here we go. Yep, there it is. So now this is the tool. It's called Leveraging Your Communities. And the first thing that I want to mention is this definition of a community and what is it? And if we want to keep it really, really simple, a community is simply a group of people who have something in common. So what they have in common could be where they work, could be a special interest they have, could be a focus around their children if it's part of a group at school. It could be, a club that they belong to. It could be a professional group that they might belong to, where they're really focused on their community of like-minded professionals. So lots of different interests come into play here. You don't have to have all of them, obviously, to be part of a community, but there's lots of different ways that communities sort of form up, if you will. Sometimes it's around something simple like going walking in the morning. So there might be a group of people that enjoy walking together, and that becomes a small community of walkers. So lots of different ways that communities begin to form informally and in some cases formally. So the next question that we want to explore here is, what does it mean to live in community? So we think of a community as this network of relationships that have something in common, and maybe in places where those relationships interact. So you might naturally think, well, perhaps your neighborhood could be a community, and it might be. But if you don't really interact with your neighbors, then you might find that while you live in proximity to one another, it's not actually an actively engaged community. So the importance of living by or being in physical proximity may or may not play a role in how that community comes together. So we know that we have lots of different vehicles for connecting with people. It could be by email, it could be by texting, it could be by video conferencing, it could be phone calls, lots of different ways that we can create those valuable interactions that really signify community and the importance of those communities. All right, so now we're going to move on to actually looking at some attributes of communities. What are some benefits of being in a community? So here's a list, if you will, of desired benefits from my communities. And this is not an exhaustive list. There's probably more than we have listed here. But I'm going to ask you to take a moment and rank these 1 through 7, where 1 is the most important of those benefits, the benefits that are important to you about community, and 7 is the least important. And they may all be important, but just for the purpose of this exercise, force rank them. So we'll look at some of these different benefits. So for example, expanding your network, either professionally or personally, might be a really important thing for you to have in community. Perhaps increasing your well-being, whether it's eliminating stress, feeling more joy, taking better care of yourself. So it could be the group that you go to the health club with, or a walking group that you have in the morning, or a group that you do yoga with. So lots of different ways that you might increase your well-being in the space of community. The next one is learning and professional growth and development. So sometimes we have communities of professionals that get together on a regular basis. They might do a book club or a study group where they're diving into some skills that they want to develop as professionals, and they support one another in that learning and development. It could be something like growing your sense of purpose and impact in the world. So you might look for a special interest group that's focused on an area that you feel is connected to your sense of purpose, and that you really want to be able to impact, and being part of community allows you to impact that more effectively. So lots of special interest groups out there that are really focused on these kinds of arenas, and where you can come together as a group, and maybe it's every Saturday you go out and you clean up a part of the city, or some other kind of activity. Maybe it's cooking and bringing food to people who are homebound. So there are lots of ways that you can find these connections, if you will, with groups that have similar interests that are aligned with their purpose as well. It might be generating new sources of inspiration and creativity. Maybe you've decided, oh, I really want to explore painting. I loved to paint when I was younger, and I really want to, kind of reignite that interest that I have. And I want to be inspired by doing this creative endeavor. Or maybe I want to write poetry, and I want to be part of a group that are focused on writing and reading our poetry together. So lots of different ways that you can explore creative expressions that you'll find inspiring. So those are very special arenas that you might want to look at as well. Maybe it's expanding your communication capabilities, and joining a group where you really focus on public speaking and sharing your ideas in ways that will perfect and enhance and grow those communication capabilities. Or perhaps it's something you might do that increases your own resilience and confidence. So getting together with a group that are all interested and focused on that, and supporting each other in being kind of resilient and confident people. So again, I'm going to suggest that you pause the recording now, go through and thoughtfully consider which of these are the top benefit that you want to really be pursuing now, and rank them 1 through 7. So that you have something here that gives you some sense of what's really most important to you about community. Okay, so now that you've done that, we'll go to page 2. And we're going to take a look at making the most of your connections in your community. So you decided on a benefit from the previous page. So from page 1, take a look at your top ranked desired benefit, and now consider a set of questions. So again, I'm going to read through the questions, but pause after each one and write down for you what would be the answer for that particular question. So the first question is, what about this benefit appeals to you? Why are you attracted to that benefit? What makes it that most important benefit that you see that you want to be considering as you're exploring community? So again, hit the pause button right now, answer that question, and then you can come back. All right, so for today, consider, why is this important to you today? Why is this benefit important in this particular moment today? 5 years ago, it might not have been important. 3 months from now, it might not be the most important, but for today it is. So why is this important to you today? Again, pause and answer that question, and then we'll move on. So now look at the list of benefits gained by leveraging your communities, all those benefits that we showed on the previous page. Who comes to mind that does that well, and what do you admire about them? So when I considered this question for myself, for example, I had 2 people who had similar attributes that I admired. They don't happen to be in the same communities, so it's not that there's an overlap there, but both of them are really skillful at cultivating a variety of different communities that really speak to a variety of different interests and purposes that they have. So there are groups and collections of communities that they have really fostered and cultivated that they stay actively involved in. So they might be related to theater or music or art or travel or, yoga. There's all kinds of different ways that they make those communities. And most of those communities don't necessarily overlap, but these two individuals do a really outstanding job of keeping themselves connected into and fostering those communities on a regular basis. And I truly admire that. I really do. So again, answer that question. Think about, who comes to mind that does it really well, and what is it that you admire about them? Okay, and now for our next to the last question. Brainstorm actions and ways that you can reach out to your friends, family, and social connections to generate ideas and or gather more information. So this is a time to really consider if I really want to increase the way that I'm participating in communities, if I want to focus on developing a new community or really expand a community that I'm already part of, what are some actions and ways that I can reach out to people who might have that same shared interest, who might want to be participating with me in that particular endeavor? And maybe it's a new community that you want to build, and you actually need to connect up with people who similarly would like to invest time and effort into building that kind of a community too. So they could come together and you could gather information, ideas about how to do that. So again, pause the recording, answer that question, and then we'll go on to the final question. All right, our final question. Now, commit to one action that you're going to take from your brainstorming list in the next 48 hours. What will you do to leverage your community? And so for me, I'm going to connect with 3 people, and I already named them in my form, if you will, on my toolkit, and really reach out and see, if we can get together and come together and really engage as a community and have some dialogue and conversation about how we might want to move together and work together going forward. So one of the things I would encourage you to keep in mind as you're doing this, and as you're really considering your communities, is another idea we have in Tiara that we call ROE, return on energy. This is a really powerful way to think about your communities. So those situations where you go to a meeting and you're there for 2 hours and you walk out after it's done and you just feel drained, it didn't really invigorate you. And then that there's another group you might go to and you might be there for 3 hours. And at the end of 3 hours, you really feel energized, you feel pumped up and excited. If you have that sense of feeling pumped up and excited and really energized by a group, that's a high return on energy. That has a high ROE. If you're part of something that actually feels draining, that's a low return on energy. So we would always encourage you to look for what are those communities and endeavors that really provide high ROE for you. And it's different for everyone. A group that might have high ROE for you might not be one that would have a high ROE for me. So this is really an important thing to consider and to take into consideration as you're choosing where to spend your time and your valuable resources in community. So I hope that this tool has been useful for you. You can always go back and revisit it, every few months just to see where are you with your communities. Community is one of those really important distinctions for us in Tiara. We love being part of community, and we think most other people do as well. So we're always happy to be in a dialogue about how to foster community in ways that feel meaningful and have a high ROE. So until the next time, you can always find us at www.tiaraleadership.com. And we absolutely love having you in our community. If you're listening to this, then we know you're in our community. So continue to be in our community, and we look forward to connecting you in the future. Bye-bye now.